Hey guys, this is Mrs. Figueroa. Sorry I couldn't be there with you today. Today you're supposed to be doing an activity, observational studies, experiments, and simulations. So you guys have 5 different scenarios in this activity. As a group, you guys are supposed to choose 3 of the following scenarios, and then you would have presented to the class an observation, like one of the 3. But obviously we're not there, so you're not going to do the presentation. You're just going to do it on your piece of paper. Now for each of the scenarios, you either have an observational study, an experiment, or a simulation. There are different things that you need to include depending on the situation. So if you have a simulation, make sure you tell me what are you going to be simulating, what tool are you going to use for your simulation. For example, a random number table, a die, a coin. You have to tell me what you are using for your simulation. And then you also have to tell me what do your outcomes represent. So if you get a 5, what does that mean? If you get a heads, what does it mean? So make sure you describe what your outcomes represent in your simulation. You also need to tell me what is your response variable, meaning like what are you interested in looking for? And then when are you going to stop each trial? If it's an observation, you need to tell me what are you going to observe your subjects doing, and how are you going to collect your data. For example, are you going to give them a survey? Just somehow tell me how are you going to collect your data from your observation. And then if we have an experiment, you need to tell me what are your treatment groups or your control group. And then how are you going to randomize into treatments? You also need to tell me how are you going to be blocking if it applies. Now, in the video last night, you guys watched the how to create an experimental design. The video showed you mostly how to use the diagram, but the diagram is just used to help you write the paragraph. Excuse me. On the AP exam, you guys need to know if you draw a diagram and you don't write a paragraph, you will get an I for that section of the exam. You guys need to write paragraph form in order to get credit for your experimental design. So just keep that in mind. Again, these are things to include in your descriptions depending if it's a simulation, an observation, or an experiment. So I would either write these down or take a screenshot of this slide so you have it for your reference. So, for example, if I look at the first one, it says your team has just been hired by a huge entertainment company that makes children's movies and shows. They have a new pilot for a show on healthy eating habits called Rumbly in My Tumbly that they would like to air on their new cable channel. They would like you to determine if children would like such a show. They have given you access to the first production. You must present from your findings in 2 weeks. So what keywords do you see in this example that will tell you it's a simulation, an experiment, or an observational study? Excuse me. So in this example, I see the keywords here is they're looking for I don't need my highlighter to be that thick. So they're trying to determine if children would like such a show. Now, if you notice in this example, that doesn't say they have 2 different types of shows and which one they'd prefer the most. So really, this to me seems like it's just an observational study. They just want to know whether or not children would like such a show. So this is an example of an observational study. So you need to tell me that this is observational study. Observational study. And you remember you need to tell me what are your subjects going to be doing. They told you in the scenario they have given you access to the first production. So your subjects are going to be watching the first production, and then you need to tell me how are you going to record your data. So if I were to do my study, I would have my participants or my subjects watch the first production, and then at the end I would give them a survey and I would ask them whether or not they liked the show. And then you would take your findings and you would present them to the company in 2 weeks. So that's what I would do in the first example. Make sure you read through the different examples, and then don't forget to look back to here, looking at your different bullet points, what situation you're looking at. Is it a simulation, observation, or experiment? And make sure you hit every bullet point under each topic. Make sure you do all 5. We had said you would do only 3 because we wanted to give you guys time to actually present your findings, but because we're not going to be there, obviously, you're not going to do the presentation, so you should have enough time to do all 5 different scenarios. So make sure you read through the scenarios, talk to your group, and discuss which of the 3 situations it falls under, and then as a group decide, or actually go through every example and make sure you hit every bullet point in your descriptions. Okay, so again, make sure you have a copy of this. Make sure you have every single thing in that bullet point for each example. Okay, all right, we'll see you guys tomorrow.